Thank you for tuning in. You're in for an educational treat. Children of poly relationships, what was it like growing up? I grew up in a small town and half of the town were hippies. In the third grade, one of my friends couldn't go on a field trip because he returned a permission slip with the word parent or legal guardian crossed out and signed by the group representative. Of course, in the third grade we didn't know what was going on until my mom explained it to me. But when the kid was told he couldn't go, the whole hippie commune came over to class explaining to the teacher how all their kids will be raised by the group and it's damaging if they see a single person as their parent or guardian. FFS, just sign the damn form and let the kid go on a effing field trip. I have a friend who is a child of a throuple. He's a cool dude, pretty normal. He says as a young kid he would always try the but mom said yes thing to get what he wants, and if his dad called him out on it he'd just say it was the other mom until they all got together. For clarification, as far as I'm aware his parents are a closed unit. Perhaps that is easier for a kid to fathom and normalize than if they always had different and new partners at home or whatever. I'm fascinated by the psychology of those relationships. Why is one man with multiple wives is so common, but not one woman with multiple husbands? I took a class with a Dr. Awasam at University of Houston, downtown for a while. He would talk about his childhood growing up in Cameroon in a family with one father and about a dozen mothers. At mealtime, the kids would run a route from one mother to the next, all grabbing a bite from each. He says he was, 12 when he learned which mother gave birth to him. When he came to Houston to study, he applied at Rice University. When filling out the application, he asked for an extra page to provide the names of all his mothers. In his culture, he was considered to be the reincarnation of his grandfather. At a special ceremony every year, he would offer his grandfather's advice and answer questions on his grandfather's behalf. It was also in his authority to prescribe punishment for his father on this occasion. When Awasam came to the States, he would attend the annual ceremonies by phone. When I was young, my folks dated a couple of couples. One was very long-term. We were military families, but they managed to finagle a transfer together. So wow, that would have been like 8 years at least? They kept in close romantic contact when they separated, but if they qualified that as still being together. They were my aunt and uncle, essentially. We and their kiddos got sent off to grandparents, theirs and ours, together to give them alone time. It was kind of a given that we'd all see each other every couple days, either they'd come to our house or we'd go to theirs. Not for them to sneak away for sexy time, but just to spend time together and be a family together. I knew I could go to them about anything, I could talk to my folks about, and even some things I couldn't. That closeness continued even when my own folks split. I quit standing they had with them after that though. Unfortunately, my aunt kinda had a psychotic menopause and we had to go NC with her. Nobody knows that I'm still in contact with uncle though. How my mom would feel about it. But he stayed a rock for me when my own dad didn't. Same drama as any other family, I guess, just more players on the stage. Hey, it's a post for me. Honestly, I think it's way more boring than most people would think. Most of the time, my mom wouldn't introduce a partner to me unless it was a long-term relationship, so most of the time I got the single mom experience. I think the most exciting thing was going out for dinner to meet someone new, and occasionally my mom would date someone who had a kid my age, and we would awkwardly play together while our parents were on a date, as in, we were playing in my room upstairs and a movie date or SMTHN was going on in the living room downstairs. Really, for the most part it was so completely average, other than knowing my mom had 2 girlfriends and eventually I also got a stepdad. The worst part was around 6th-8th grade when kids found out and started bullying me for it, asking all kinds of disgusting sexual questions about my parents. No one wants to think about their parents having sex. Eventually I learned to just not tell anyone unless we were close and I knew they were cool. I only ever had one person I trusted enough to actually come to a family picnic where my mom's partners would all be there. My mom's partners aren't my parents, but they are part of my life and my family. They're wonderful and supportive, and have helped me through some horrible dark spots in my life. I'm grateful to have such a wonderful, loving family. When I was younger I didn't realize mom and dad were poly, but now it's funny to see my friends' faces when I say my mom and her wife and my dad's girlfriend and his other girlfriend and I are gonna get together for dinner tonight. You must have a massive dinner table. Better than massive walls after all. It wasn't a huge deal when I was a kid, essentially it was just like hanging out with your parents and their friends. Some of my mom's so's had kids my age that I got along with really well. That being said, A little while ago my mom was flirting with a guy and referred to me as her mono kid in the same tone I've heard ultra-conservative folk refer to gay kids, so our relationship is a little strained these days. Her other daughter is 12, so I'm really not certain why that comment was anywhere near necessary. I had a therapist in a poly relationship and they all three had a child together that was around 9 when I met them, 2 dads and 1 mom. Unfortunately, they couldn't be fully open about the fact that the 3 of them were in love since before she was born, because the one she called dad worked for a religious college and that information getting out at all could have cost him his career, so she only called 2 of them mom and dad while she thought of the other like an uncle that visited every day. She seemed normal, she liked to make slime. I'm really glad you liked the therapist and had fun making slime, but I am super duper confused about why you knew any of this. I am 15 years old. And my parents often have potlucks where they invite their partners over. My parents are good people, and everyone they invite over are good people and have become my friends. I also usually will meet their children and become friends with them. It really is just a wonderful environment, but it is very difficult to maintain. More partners equals more drama, and a lot of times 2 people will get in a fight and cause the whole group to split for a while. But all in all, it's pretty great. Hey! It's not often you get to talk about it while you're experiencing it. Most of these are people who experienced it years ago and have a new perspective now. Thank you for your comment. Hey, this is one that I can finally answer. I come from what would seemingly look like a nuclear family. Mom/dad/sister/me. My parents, however, would go out on weekends to swingers clubs or house parties. I didn't know this as a child. I would say I learned this when I was 13-ish. And it was in discussion around jealousy and my response to jealousy in a high school relationship that I was in. I distinctly remember my dad saying to me, "Jealousy is an emotional response to you missing something. You need to work on finding out what is making you jealous," followed by a discussion about how him and mom have never been closed and that they were happy to seek other partners as they saw fit. There were many discussions around dating culture that I remember. I remember a few of the people that they were friends with would come over to our house. They were great people. I considered them like I would any other friend of my parents. I ended up expanding into poly relationships early in high school. My triad went to the homecoming dance together, for example. Can't really say it felt weird or odd, as it was just what I was used to, but I think I can honestly say it's made me a more open and loving person. I'm not afraid of being close to people because my parents were always very close with their friends, for reasons that are obvious now but less so at the time. I also grew up getting to know my parents' friends quite well because my parents were very close with them and trusted them enough to look after us, although I'll admit this was probably more so they could have the house free of children. It does mean that I'm still quite close with a lot of them and consider them friends of mine outside of my parents' friendship with them, and I also have a few more parental figures to choose from, meaning I can pick the best ones from each to try and emulate. All in all, I'd say I'm a more well-rounded person as I got to know a lot more people as family growing up, as well as exposing me to many different personalities. Had a friend several years ago that grew up with poly parents in Kansas. What he described seemed like a pretty healthy family/upbringing, and I would describe him as a well-adjusted, happy human. I don't think either parent was particularly promiscuous, but throughout the years they would have other partners. He was a proponent of polyamory and had a pretty good way of explaining it. Basically, no one person can satisfy your everything, so polyamorists have more than one partner that allow them to experience romantic partnership on a fuller level of their being. Polyamory isn't my cup of tea, but it is possible to have healthy relationships with this lifestyle, including that of a family. Honestly, I don't know that it would be for me either. But that is defo one of the most helpful ways to put it, for the sake of understanding. It makes me understand the point and appeal. This will probably be buried, but it happened to my husband, who didn't even realize it was happening. When he was a kid, his father lived with his mothers, one of whom he thought was his birth mother and the other was an identical twin to her that he just called his aunt. He said it felt pretty normal. He never knew it was poly until much later in his life. Several years back, his mother had passed away and his aunt contacted him again asking if she could move in with him to have him help her as her caregiver. He agreed, and just before her passing he received a letter from her lawyer, written by the twins and his father, finally explaining everything. Turned out his aunt was his actual birth mother, who had kids with his father too before he was born, but who had passed away in a house fire. The mother that raised him was completely sterile and in fact had a hysterectomy at a very young age. He was in complete shock, but said it made sense how close everyone was in the house, despite keeping all the adult stuff behind closed doors. His big shock seemed more the fact that his father kept up 2 relationships instead of just one, and he was either scared, impressed, or both. Later. The poly part didn't really become known to me till I was 13 or so. The only weird bit was if I was bringing home a friend or someone I wanted to go out with, I had to kind of explain what to expect beforehand, and some people got weirded out. I'm an adult in a monogamous marriage now. I saw firsthand that getting 3 people to come to a consensus on anything was exponentially more difficult than just getting 2 on the same page. My parents were swingers. They went to bondage clubs and things like that. I found out in my late teens, so I didn't really care all that much. I learned of it through my friend who told me his mom told him that my parents asked if they were interested one night when they were chilling in the hot tub. Started to put the pieces together after that. All the Halloween costumes in that box that I always overlooked. It's weird, but whatever, more power to them. Don't think they do it anymore though, they're getting a little too old for that life. I have some shocking news for you that once you were out of the house they probably got crazier. Polygamy is very common on my dad's side. My grandpa has 30+ wives. My dad has about 4 last time I heard. Anyway, it was awful. Hated that part of my childhood, and my mom escaped and left with me when I was a child. Sometimes I see him. It's just super awkward around him and my half-siblings. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.